Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Beyond Horizons. We're kicking off today's episode with a very historic moment for the space program. This is the first ever launch from our Omega base on the surface of the moon. The payload itself is not particularly exciting, but this is nonetheless a very exciting milestone for the playthrough. So what we have here is Keg V. If you've been watching the series for a while, you'll know that Keg is my naming scheme for all the fuel tanks I'm sending into orbit. So this is basically all this is. It's just a giant fuel tank that we're attaching to the Hammerhead Station, which is of course our orbital refueling depot in lunar orbit, so we actually need some fuel on it for it to be able to do its job. The benefit of launching from the moon is that we can make this thing quite heavy and still get it into orbit relatively easily. I opted for one of the Vector engines you might have seen underneath there, but it was actually quite underpowered. It was able to lift off the surface, but unfortunately, it just didn't have enough power to maximize the amount of delta V it had. I think it had about 2 kilometers per second, but yeah, it just didn't actually use all of it because we made significant losses to gravity. So I'm going to come back and try and rework that, I think. But in any case, it had just enough power to eke its way into orbit. So yeah, because we made so many losses to gravity on the way up, we didn't have enough fuel for the landing. The idea was to land this back at Omega base so that we could reuse it, but we had about 500 meters per second, which from this altitude is just not enough to land, let alone choose our landing site. So I just opted for a fun ballistic trajectory, and I wanted to watch this thing explode and crash into the moon. I think next time I'm definitely going to give this thing 2 Vector engines, just so it has more power. And that way we can actually get all of the delta V that this thing has. And maybe we'll even give it a bit more fuel. Anyway, there he goes, exploding into the surface. And the probe core goes flying off, spinning wildly, and then I accidentally knocked one of the control buttons and paused it. So I gave it a little bit more rotation just because I thought this is a pretty cool visual. As it slowly floats its way back down to the surface and explodes. Bit of a waste, but what can you do? We'll have to make sure that the next launcher is more reusable. In the last episode, we launched the Soteria Station, which was an orbital parking lot for all of the vessels that are tied to our infrastructure projects around the moon. And in doing so, I realised there are two Kerbals in the Soteria Station and also in Hammerhead that need bringing home, because I'm not really sure how long they've been there. So yeah, it's time to go get them back, and we're doing that with the latest iteration of Ayla. Ayla is our orbital crew transfer vessel, and this is its latest version, which has the capacity to land on the moon. I think its predecessor Ayla 6 or 5 could also land on the moon, but this does so with a lot more fuel and finesse. Now, it's not just the forgotten Kerbals around the moon that we're rescuing. I have a contract to do a crew rotation for our Foxglove station here on the surface of Minmus. Which is why I gave this thing so much fuel, is so that it could do one round trip to both moons. And we wouldn't have to, do this in 2 missions. And luckily we launched at a pretty good time. Minmus was approaching its node of dissension, I think. Which means we can just go straight into an encounter without having to do any plane changes, which is nice, but we came in a slightly inclined orbit around Minmus. The base is along roughly the equator, so we just did a little plane change. It's very easy to do around Minmus because it is such a small body. All of these maneuvers take practically no delta V whatsoever. What does take a little more delta V is landing at a precise location, which of course we have to do here. We don't want to make all of our Kerbals walk several kilometers just to do a little transfer. This is why I came here first, so this is going to be the most fuel expensive part of the mission, and so if we get back into Minmus orbit and I think, oh, we don't have enough fuel to make it to the moon, then we can just call it there and come straight back without stranding all of our Kerbinauts out in lunar orbit somewhere. Anyway, here we are coming in for a landing less than 100 meters away from our target, which for my standards is pretty damn good. And now it's time to swap the Kerbals round. This base is actually lasting a lot longer than I had originally intended it to. There are some experiments on this station that they should have been done by now. I really don't know why they're taking as long as they are. I think one of them is only going to take 130 days. And the problem is we can't run them all at once because the base doesn't produce enough power to run every experiment at once, unfortunately. So I've been doing it one at a time, but I think sometimes I get a Kerbal out and put it in the wrong habitation module, and so the experiment never gets run. So that's a bit annoying. That's why we've actually done, I think this is the 2nd crew change now we've done for this station, but it's living well past its intended date. Oh, Kerman tripping up as he comes out there. I tried to do this last time and get them all to have like a nice little friendly discussion on the surface of Minmus, but it looks a bit more like a standoff. Really, who will break first and take the base, I guess, but no, they're just having a nice chat, telling each other about the quirks of the base. Oh yeah, make sure you let the hot water tap run for a few seconds before you use it. But yeah, after their little discussion, they get into their respective vessels. The new crew are getting settled in, and the old crew are pretty eager to get home, but unfortunately they're not going straight home yet. They've got a trip to the moon to do first, which is probably going to tack at least another week onto their journey. You might have noticed there is actually Ayla 5 still on the surface, and if you're wondering why I'm not just using that to return the crew, I kind of have this in my head canon that's like an emergency return vehicle now. Because we have to transfer crew anyway, as in rotate crew, sorry. We need to get another lander down anyway, so I'm leaving that one there just in case there's any kind of emergency, they have a way back. Now, here I did a plane change to bring myself into a more equatorial orbit. My thinking was if I'm less inclined in my orbit, then I won't be so out of the plane when I try and do my escape burn and encounter the moon, but unfortunately in waiting for this encounter that you're seeing on screen now, Minmus has since moved out of that node of descension, which means we are now below the orbital plane of the moon, so we are coming in pretty inclined, so we'll have to fix that when we get there. You might have noticed I'm stopping my commentary just to focus a bit more on the cinematics. I've noticed, actually, watching back some of my older videos, that I just yap a little too much, and I don't really mind doing that, and maybe you don't mind listening to that, but sometimes I'm talking over some really nice cinematics, and I'm like, dude, shut up. Just, like, let's admire the cinematics, you know? So if you prefer the slightly less chatty approach and the more visual approach, just let me know in the comments. Or if you prefer me yapping about some silly stuff, I can easily do that as well. Anyway, we've made our lunar injection burn, and we also did a quick plane change so that we can rendezvous here with Soteria Station first. Coming in for a nice calm docking over the moon. Kazu Kerman is waiting in there thinking, wow, I'm really cramped in this little station. I can't wait to get a bit more space. But unfortunately, she's actually going to go into an even more cramped ship. Of course, we have to stop and admire the visuals before doing our crew transfer. Kazu Kerman gets in Ayla 7 and we undock, so now we're going to be heading to Hammerhead Station, where I believe we are picking up Grawell Kerman. Oh, and quickly renaming the station, because apparently I forgot to do that. Here we are on our way to Hammerhead. I think keeping everything in very similar orbits is working out as well as I wanted it to. It means we don't spend very much fuel going between the stations, and it's quite easy to get an encounter when travelling between them. Not that fuel is a massive problem for Ayla 7 here, because I packed, I think, about 3 kilometers per second of Delta V in this upper stage, which is more than enough for what we need it for. But I've thought better to pack too much fuel than not enough, and then I've got a little bit of wiggle room. Anyway, here we are coming up on Hammerhead, and it's making me remember the Annie, the colony ship that I've sent down to the Omega base. I think I want to do another rotation of that, just to kind of like show that that would be happening in the background. Obviously, I can't just keep flying it all the time because I'd lose my mind, but I want to kind of show that the base is functioning behind the scenes. And the music swells dramatically in almost a pathetic fallacy for the disaster that just struck there. You can see I've run out of monopropellant, I forgot to pack more, and I'm slowly drifting towards the station, and I panicked. I was like, I don't know where to point, I just quickly fire the engine to get me out of the way, and I don't break anything, and I did knock the station a little bit with the exhaust from our engine there, which I think in real life would be really bad, but it's Kerbal Space Program, so we can get away with it. Anyway, Grawell Kerman then has to chase down the Ayla to get in, which I guess luckily she was already wearing her spacesuit, otherwise she probably would have been stuck there. Yeah, that was a bit comical, and whichever silly Kerbal back in the VAB forgot to pack the monopropellant is certainly losing his or her job. Anyway, after that drive-by of a rendezvous, it's time to say goodbye to the moon and all the stations we've got around it, and head home. Making my escape burn such that when I finish doing that burn, my trajectory is going retrograde along the moon's orbit, and that way we make our most efficient return. Luckily, this thing has loads of fuel, so we don't really have to worry about efficiency, but we're going to use all of that fuel to circularize, and then that way we can kind of choose our landing site and try and get as close to the Space Center as possible. Now, I've mentioned before that I am looking to wrap up this, like, series, quote-unquote, because this save file is starting to bug out quite badly. And we see a terrific example of that coming up just now. So I finished my circularization, and there's me making a maneuver so I can plan my landing. And as I come round to the daytime side to, you know, do the landing, or the re-entry, sorry, you can see, yeah, everything goes black. Yeah, nothing's working. And I'm like, what's going on? Maybe something's wrong with my visuals. No, the game is bugging out. So I think, oh, we'll just reload. And then the game crashed. And not only did the game crash, my whole computer started bugging out. And I was like, oh, this is very concerning. Luckily, when I started the game back up again after it crashed, we were pretty much in the same place. So I could go ahead with the re-entry anyway. And we might as well make it a nice cinematic one. And there we are, we got all of our Kerbinauts safely home after several weeks jumping around Kerbin's moons. Anyway, that's all I've got for today's episode, so if you enjoyed the episode, please consider leaving a like and maybe even subscribing to the channel. And if you want to check out older episodes of Beyond Horizons, you can check out the playlist that this video's in, or have a look on screen now, and one of the videos should be recommended for you. But yeah, I've been Moonfish1001, and I'll see you in the next video.